Welcome to Med Talks, a place for mentorship, education, and development. Inspired by early careerists eager to learn from the knowledge and experiences of their preceptors, Med Talks was created as a professional development platform where UF Health preceptors can share their stories with the next generation of healthcare leaders. Each month we will hear from a different leader on topics ranging from technical tips and tricks to life lessons and growth opportunities that have made them the leaders they are today. Think of Med Talks as a place where leaders can share all the things their younger selves needed to know. During this time, we invite you to ask questions and learn as our leaders share what motivates and drives them to success.
So today, as Allison mentioned, kind of want to talk to you about some things to consider as you're moving on into your career. I know some of you already have positions and hopefully have looked at your benefit plans, but for others, I'm just kind of going to give you some things to think about as you're searching the job market, some things you might want to consider, or how you can kind of evaluate what's important to you. So next slide, please. First off, we'll be starting with some personal considerations. And then next we'll be discussing compensation beyond the base salary and benefits. And then we'll go into some tools and resources and finish up with a Q&A. So I frequently get asked, how do I go about finding a job? Well, there are some key considerations that you should really think about as you're starting your search. You have to decide what's most important to you. Is it money? Is it the title? Is it the name of the organization? Is it a work-life balance? Is it the culture of the organization? Or is it location? So for me, I'll tell you, when I graduated the MHA program, the most important thing was staying in Gainesville. So right off the bat, that limited some of my options. But throughout this presentation, I'll also kind of tell you a little bit about my story and how I ended up here today. So next slide. Along with the things on this slide that you should consider, you should think about personal satisfaction. So Allison found this quote from Suze Orman, who is a financial advisor and podcaster. Your compensation is not merely your paycheck. It's the sum total of every benefit and perk that contributes to your overall well-being and satisfaction in your career. So as I was graduating from my undergrad degree, what I wanted to go into most was arts administration. Found out it's a little hard to get into that field because there aren't too many jobs. So I had applied for a job in Fort Lauderdale, working for Broward County, in the Division of Cultural Arts. I interviewed, didn't hear back. So I broadened my search outside of arts administration, ended up getting a job at Seacoast Bank at the headquarters in the finance division. And I will say banking was probably not for me, but about 2 weeks after starting that job, I finally heard back from Broward County that I had gotten a position in arts administration. So, I did face a tough decision about quitting the job I had just started and starting what ultimately I wanted to do, or kind of sticking through what I had just started. So I had decided to stick through what I just started. I don't regret the decision, but at the same time, you always think about the what ifs. So ultimately, after working there for 2 years, I decided that job did not, I'll say the industry did not satisfy me. So, which is why I ended up in health administration. Could you go to the next slide, please? So now we're going to touch on compensation beyond base salary. So this is going to be looking at your benefits and things you might want to consider. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard some of these terms before, but others, they might be a little new. So just some food for thought as you're going about your future careers. So some things to consider are your retirement benefits, 401k, 403b, and Roth. Also think about employer match. So sometimes employers will contribute to your retirement plan. Depending on what their plan is, you really want to try to maximize as much as you can so you get the full benefit of the employer match. And another thing to consider with retirement is the vesting period and how long you think you'll stay at that company. Also consider your healthcare benefits. So you guys are probably familiar with the two most common plans, PPO, HMO. I'm a PPO kind of girl if it's offered because I see a lot of specialists. And as you guys know, with HMO, you typically have to go through your primary care provider in order to get a referral. There's also FSA and HSA contributions. So an FSA is a flexible spending account. So that's an account that you elect how much you want to contribute during the year. With an FSA, you do have to spend those funds by the end of the year. But what's good about that is it's that contribution does not get counted towards your taxes. So it's tax-free money that you're putting into an account to spend. An HSA is a health savings account. Those are typically only available with a high deductible health insurance plan. And what's different about an HSA is it's kind of like a bank or an investment account. So you allot how much you want to contribute. Some accounts let you invest it. Others are just a savings account. My old company, it was just a savings account because we were a bank. But I did get interest on it. Also, one thing that some companies provide is they will contribute to like an HSA. At my old company, all I had to do was go in for a wellness visit like in the spring. But with an HSA, you don't have any time period you have to spend it. It does have to be on qualified expenses. But with that sticks with you. And then of course, any additional coverage and then some other benefits to consider. Will this job provide you a flexible schedule? Can you work from home? Can you do 410s? How much PTO you get, relocation allowances, gym memberships, paid family leave is a big one, and I'll talk about professional development allowance. So how much money the company will give you to pursue your own endeavors, such as going to conferences, taking courses, buying books. And then one that's on the bottom that I do just want to touch on, you can't see it, but it's stock options or equity into the company. You probably won't get that unless you're, working for one of the bigger places. But if you do work for a publicly traded company, sometimes they do offer equity as part of your compensation package. My old company, they gave a bonus at the end of the year of like 5 shares, which was a nice little perk. It wasn't too much, but with time it has grown a little bit more. So next slide, please. So for your 401k or your 403b, you do have the option of the traditional plan, which is tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes on the money you put into the account, versus a Roth, where you contribute with after-tax dollars. So the difference with that is with a traditional plan, you will pay taxes when you take the money out when you're retired, versus a Roth, you've already paid taxes on it, so you don't have to pay any more taxes. The other benefits of having a traditional 401k account is it will lower your adjusted gross income, so that means you could potentially fall into a lower tax bracket. Another thing with traditional is you do have to start making distributions by age 73. They are mandatory. And then also with withdrawals for a traditional, they do have a 10% penalty if you take them out before age 59 and a half. There are some exceptions if you're disabled or, if something medically happens. There are certain ways you can get out of the penalty. And then with a Roth, as we said, withdrawals are tax-free. You can have income restrictions. So if you make a certain amount of money, you might not be able to contribute to your Roth. This is probably just more for independent retirement accounts as opposed to your employer one. I think there might be a cap at $350 depending on your employer one. There are no required minimum distributions, so you can pass your full account on to your beneficiaries. And then any contributions you make during a year can be withdrawn without a penalty. Not the earnings though, only the contributions. And then earnings, you would get a penalty of 10% if you took it out before you were 59 and a half. And also if the account is less than 5 years, you need to have it for at least 5 years. So the reason I'm bringing these two up is you're most likely going to be offered these two options. And really the thing you should consider is, am I going to be in a lower tax bracket now, or am I going to be in a lower tax bracket when I retire? So now you'll probably have more deductions than you would when you retire, but at the same time, you'll probably be like making less money when you retire. So I think the general advice most people give is have both. That way you kind of cover yourself. But it really is a gamble on whether you think you'll be making, whether you'll be in a higher bracket now versus then. So kind of moving on from the compensation and benefit side of things, really consider culture and development of the organization that you're going to be working for. Do your personal beliefs align with the vision, mission, and values of the company? Are you going to feel fulfilled working there? Always research the reputation of the company, especially if you don't particularly know them. And then also think about career development opportunities. Definitely bring this up in your interviews. Ask about mentorship, feedback, career advancement, and networking. And then there's not a slide for this, but I did briefly want to touch on negotiation. It's not something I have a lot of experience in, but I know that, it is really important. So considering all the benefits that we just talked about, negotiation does not always fall down to just an increase of your salary. So I have heard of people negotiating more vacation time, also more stock options or equity with the company if that's available. You could also try negotiating for a different flexible schedule or work from home. But always go into a negotiation after having done your research. If you're going for salary, try to talk to other professionals doing similar jobs, whether that's through LinkedIn or alumni, and go into it with that figure in mind, but be willing to negotiate, and if they can't increase salary, perhaps they can increase one of the other perks. So Allison and I wanted to include some tools. So financial planning, it's always good to start a budget, particularly if you're moving to a new location and you're kind of not familiar with, what utilities might cost, or, maybe they do more taxes in the state of Florida. So I definitely recommend budgeting to see what your salary would cover. I've used Mint in the past. I liked it a lot. I know you guys are pretty adept at Excel. You could probably also come up with one in Excel. For retirement planning, many of the websites have calculators, so you can compare what you might get in a traditional 401k versus a Roth plan based on your retirement year, how much you contribute, and what you expect your tax rate to be. Also, if you're moving to a new location, I highly suggest looking at a cost of living calculator. So for fun, I put in Gainesville to LA. If you're making $70,000 in Gainesville, you would need to be making $110,000 in LA in order to be, keeping the same ratio. So Bankrate has a good calculator. And then if you want to learn more about negotiation, there's always LinkedIn Learning, and there are a ton of articles on Harvard Business Review to get some tips and tricks. To conclude it all, always think about your personal goals, what's going to fulfill you and what you value the most. Review your benefits for the company, especially if you have multiple offers. Evaluate your organizational culture and growth prospects. You don't want to be stuck in the same job for a long time. Use your salary research and financial planning tools, and stay open and adaptable to career changes. All right, well, thank you guys.